questions without notice. The Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister.
The Leader of the Opposition can resume his seat. I'm only joking. Go on.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. After the election, the Prime Minister said that he'd learned a clear lesson about his attacks on Medicare. But last night, in a train wreck of an interview with Laura Jays about the government's cuts to Medicare, the Minister for Health said, and I quote, "The policy settings are correct. The policy settings are where they need to be." Who is correct, the Prime Minister or the Minister, or has the government learned nothing about the election and its attacks on Medicare?
The Prime Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the opposition leader for the opportunity to advise the House exactly how the Minister and the government is delivering health care for all Australians. Record levels of health funding, record levels of bulk billing, making medicines more accessible and cheaper for all Australians. In our first 3 years, nearly 1,000 new medicines were approved for the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme, worth $4.4 billion. And compare that to 331 new medicines in Labor's last 3 years. So that's 3 times as many new medicines. Now, Mr Speaker, not everyone in the House may be aware, but today is Metastatic Breast Cancer Awareness Day. Breast cancer rates are too high. Thousands are living with metastatic breast cancer, and tragically around 3,000 die every year of this disease. So I'm pleased that, due to our government's strong economic management, we've been able to add new drugs to the PBS. We've funded $191 million over 4 years to list 2 new drugs used to treat HER2 positive metastatic breast cancer, Perjeta and Kadcyla, in addition to allowing more flexibility with the use of Herceptin. Without government subsidy, Mr Speaker, these medicines would cost consumers over $82,700 a year to access. Now, Mr Speaker, let me tell the House a real-life story about Karen from Yass, New South Wales, a single parent with 3 children at home, including a daughter with an intellectual disability. She was first diagnosed with early breast cancer in 2010. It spread in 2012. She started on Kadcyla soon after it became available on the PBS. Now, these are her words. "To say that Kadcyla turned my life around is a major understatement. Because it is a targeted treatment, it isn't as debilitating as more traditional chemo treatment. For the first time in years, I was well enough to do more about the house, picked up some casual work again, and was able to catch up on my daughter's medical stuff that I'd struggled to be on top of. I could actually go out with the family and have some quality of life again. It's still a chemical therapy and it still has side effects. But the fact that it is available to me, just an average mum, wanting to hang in there for her kids, is truly a complete blessing. Mr Speaker, let me say Karen is by no means an average mum, and I'm sure that all members wish her the very best of health in the future and acknowledge that making that drug available, which we have been able to do, is changing and sustaining her life.
The member for Bennelong.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Will the Prime Minister update the House on the delivery of the government's National Economic Plan? In particular, how will our tax cuts benefit more than 500,000 middle-income Australians? And how will the expanded Singapore-Australia Free Trade Agreement provide more opportunities for Australian exporters?
The Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for his question and note that his electorate is a hive of industry and innovation and exporters. Mr Speaker, the government is getting on with the job. We're delivering a national economic plan that boosts growth and jobs and improves the living standards of every Australian and secures the future for our children and our grandchildren. Our policies are pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-investment. This week alone, we've delivered income tax cuts that will benefit more than 500,000 middle-income Australians. enhanced, expanded the Singapore-Australia Free Trade Agreement, meaning more opportunities for Australian exporters and more investment at home, and we've passed legislation to protect emergency services volunteers, including the volunteers, the heroes of Victoria's Country Fire Authority, from attacks by militant unions. The Labor Party, by contrast, Mr Speaker, is interested only in playing political games. Their policies are anti-investment, anti-trade, and will fail to deliver the economic growth and the jobs that we need. Mr Speaker, our tax system must be fair. It must encourage people to work hard, to invest, to save and reward sensible risk-taking and entrepreneurship. This cannot be achieved with income tax rates and scales that discourage additional effort. No country has ever taxed its way to prosperity. The government's income tax cuts, which apply from the 1st of July this year, increase the upper threshold of the 32.5% bracket from $80,000 to $87,000. And this means that more than 500,000 middle-income Australians will continue paying 32.5% marginal income tax instead of being pushed into the higher 37% rate over the next 3 years. Now, Mr Speaker, the government is also delivering for the thousands of Australian exporters and small and medium businesses seeking even greater access to the growing markets of Asia. The amended Singapore-Australia Free Trade Agreement offers enormous potential for our exporters, particularly those in services, to boost trade with Singapore, already Australia's largest trade and investment partner in Southeast Asia. This is a big win for our services sector, delivering greater access for engineers, accountants, financial planners, lawyers and education providers to sell their services to Singapore. Commenting on the deal, PwC's Asia practice leader Andrew Parker said, "The upgraded SAFTA is unique in its focus on skills, mobility and education, which are vital to Australia's services exports rather than the usual removal of trade tariffs." We're getting on with the job, of delivering jobs and growth for now and for the future.